Hello, this is Mr. Cerisa. I'm going to do number 25 on page 794. Sorry about this. I thought it copied the first time or saved the first time and it didn't save. So let me start this one off. It has a meat market combines ground beef and ground pork in a single package for meat loaf. So let's put that down. Beef and pork. Alright. And the ground beef is 75% lean. And the pork is 60% lean. And then it says the beef costs 75 cents per pound, and the pork is 45 cents per pound. And the meatloaf must be at least 70% lean. So the meatloaf is made up, well, let's call the beef X and the pork Y. So the meatloaf will be X plus Y because we're combining a certain amount of the beef and a certain amount of the pork. So the beef is 75% lean, so I multiply that by 0.75 because that will be how much actual beef is there, and then same with the pork is 0.60 Y. And then so we want a result of 70% lean of the meatloaf as a whole. So we combine all of that together to get the 0.75, etc. Alright, so, and that has to be at least 70%, so let me put greater than or equal to on there. And then what I'll do is I'll do some algebra and solve for y. I think will be easiest because we're going to end up graphing that, so it's easier to be in the slope-intercept form, I think. In this case, I'll subtract out 0.7x from both sides. Oops, look at that. I put a y instead of an x. Silly me. There we go. Alright, and then, so that's 0.05x. And then I'll subtract a 0.6y. So that these cancel, those canceled. 0.6y. So we end up with 0.1y. Like I said, I want y by itself, so I'm going to divide, 0.1 on both sides. They cancel. And so now I have y is less than or equal to 0.05 to 0.1 is the same as a 1 to 2 ratio. So I'm just going to write this as y is less than or equal to x over 2. Let's see, other constraints that they put on that. They want to use at least 50 pounds of the available pork. Apparently they're trying to get rid of the pork for some reason. And then they're trying to make sure they have no more than 200 pounds of the beef. So the beef is x less than or equal to 200. Alright, so we have some constraints there. One thing we don't have is the objective function. So they want to figure out how much beef and pork should be mixed so that the cost is minimized. So we're interested in cost. And seeing that it's 75% for beef and 45 cents for pork, that's going to be our objective function. So let's work that out. We have our axes. Actually, let's just put that into a different color so it's easier to see. Alright, so we have our beef and we have our pork. And they say to have 200, that is for the beef, and 50 for the pork. So let's put 200 about here. I want to keep the scale about the same, so I'm going to put 200 about there, which means there's 100, and half of that is 50, and so beef will be this line, and it has to be less than 200. 50 will be this line, it has to be more than 50, and then finally the y is less than half x, which means for every 1 we go up, we have to go over 2. So I just cut that in half, and that's 100. So if we start at 0, 0, up 50 over 100, up 50 over 100, that will be our line. Okay, and then so that's our y is less than x over 2 line. Sometimes I like to write the equations or inequalities in to help me out when I'm trying to find out what those major points are. And we have to be less than. So that's going to be this zone. So we already have a couple of the marks in there, and then here. A few of these points are pretty easy, like where 250 intersect is 250. And then our x has to be twice the y. So if our x is 100 there, it makes sense that the y is 50. And if the x is 200 here, makes sense that the y is 100. Alright, so there's our 3 points. So let's try them out in here. So we have, actually let's start 100, and we have 50, 250, and then 200, 100. Alright, and so we're just plugging that in, 0.75, 100, plus 0.45, 50. And we get 97 and a half. Okay, and then the next one, 0.75, 200. So when I'm doing this on the calculator, I just do second enter, and then I just had to change this 1 into a 2. So that makes it a lot easier when I just to solve these problems. It's a lot quicker to do that. So 172.5, and then finally 0.75, 200. Again, I do second enter on my calculator, and now I put in 100 instead of 50, and I get 195. And so we can see pretty easily that this one is the cheapest cost, which is what we're trying to minimize. So 100 pounds of beef and 50 pounds of pork is what we need to mix for our meatloaf. Okay, thanks. I hope that this helped.